Progress.
Good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 7th meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission. We'll start with a roll call. Chair Lisa Hanson, present. Vice Chair Jacob Miller.
Present.
Alder Jim Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Darius Daniels.
Present.
Commissioner Ken Ravinsky.
Present.
Commissioner Emma Fulwilder.
Present.
And Commissioner Kelsey Lutzow is excused. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Approval of the agenda for the Monday, October 7th, 2024 meeting of the Green Bay Plan Commission.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to the approval of minutes. Approval of the minutes from the September 23rd, 2024 meeting.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And then moving on to regular business, and item number 1 is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been published in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We will now open the public hearing on item number 1. Public hearing on a request to rezone properties along the west side of St. Agnes Drive from low-density residential district to medium-density residential district, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proposal is along the city's west side along South Military and St. Agnes Drive. So there are a bunch of double fronting lots that I'm sure you're familiar with. Further south here is that slip that goes from Lombardi onto Military. So the parcels here that are highlighted, there are 14 in total, and they are all side-by-side duplexes. So the future land use map calls for low-density residential, and the existing zoning map also calls for that low-density R1 residential. You can see it's primarily the entire neighborhood outside of this, which is some zoning where a church actually exists. I thought we updated that, but I guess not. So with this, staff had a request from a neighbor here. They wanted to do some work. We realized that these parcels have been duplexes since they were built between 1960 and 1978. Presumably it was allowed use or some sort of conditioned use back then. But most of these do not have conditional use permits on file because they did not have to when our zoning districts changed over with our zoning updates in '84 and then in '06. So as kind of a cleanup action, we want the zoning to match the existing land uses there. That would allow for a little bit more ease in use if any of the duplexes did want to do any work, any additions, any expansions without that CUP requirement. So that is the background on that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 2. Consideration with possible action on a request to rezone properties along the west side of St. Agnes Drive from low-density residential R1 district to medium-density residential R2 district, submitted by Community and Economic Development.
Thank you. So with that, we are recommending approval of the request to go from R1 zoning to R2 zoning for the 14 parcels along that stretch.
Okay. Thank you.
Motion to approve as recommended.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Ravinsky, second by Commissioner Fulwilder. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And then that will move forward to City Council October 15th.
Yep. That's the month we're in right now.
It is, yes, that is, yep, okay, all right. Is that next Tuesday? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect, all right. All right, moving on to item number 3, which is a public hearing, and this public hearing has been properly posted and notification has been published in the Press Gazette. Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items, and we invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information, and your comments or concerns. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 3. Public hearing on a request to rezone 1830 Military Access Road from low-density residential district to public institutional district and general commercial district, submitted by Dan Van Straten of Highway Crest Baptist Church, property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So the property you're looking at is over off the Military Access Road. To the south is Eschwabman and the Talatown development. To the north would be what you just happened to look at, that neck of the woods, off of St. Agnes. The church itself in that block has 2 parcels. To the west, you're seeing in the future land use is the commercial space offices in the multi-story building that's at the corner of Lombardi and Military. And to the east is Highland Crest Baptist Church. In the middle, shared parking between both properties. And so what you're seeing in the future land use is that there's public for where the church property is at, and then commercial in the rest of the block. As far as the site zoning right now, it is R1 low-density residential, like a lot of the churches and places like that. It's been that way as far as the route in the past. Off to the west, you can't see it that well, but the property to the west itself is a PUD. That was approved about 3 decades ago, out that way. And so what triggered this was a site plan that would go through as far as staff approvals. Just want to give you a basic idea of this. But they're looking to do some improvements to their parking lot and do an addition to the church buildings. And so with that in mind, petitioner has asked to do both a PI and a C1. Now, when we get the recommendations, staff typically looks at parcels and want to have one singular zoning, unless there's something that is just truly oddball about it, say physical limitations of the property, things of that sort. This does not have that. This has accessory parking for both the church and shared parking for the commercial off to the west, which they're not looking to touch. And when it comes to future land use, you can have multiple designations on one property because that line's not particularly fixed unlike zoning. We'll get the recommendations at the next part of this.
Thank you. All right, now with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item.
Good evening. I'm Rick Fisher with Fisher & Associates Architects, W13654 Balsam Lake Road in Crivets. And I've been the architect working with the church for the project. Our request was to follow the long-term plan use. And what we realized is we were working with staff for our initial site plan review that there was a number of potential non-conforming conditions, green space and other things like that. And through our redesign and help with the staff, we were able to massage our plan and get all the things we need to work, except for some of the setbacks in green space. So our request was based on the long-term plan. We understand that split zoning isn't necessarily a preferred option from the city standpoint, so we don't have a objection to single zoning at this time, because it makes sense from the city perspective at this time if there was some other development or something. I talked to David about that and understand the concern or the reasoning from a city standpoint, so we have no objection to single zoning. Because it still gives us the same, regulations as C1 that we need to make our project work, so.
Okay, sounds good.
Right.
Thank you so
You
much.
can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item, item number 4. Consideration with possible action on a request to rezone 1830 Military Access Road from low-density residential district to public institutional district and general commercial district, submitted by Dan Van Straten of Highland Crest Baptist Church, property owner.
Thank you, Chair. So, staff does want to see this be one singular zoning on the property. The use as far as the accessory parking for both places can work. The PI designation allows for a better classification and physical performance standards to allow for that driveway, parking lot, and expansion of the building on the property to go into place. If in the future, there was an idea to potentially utilize that parking lot as a commercial space, there'd be a land division proposed. You can come back, the future land use calls for commercial, that could happen, but since right now it's a accessory lot, don't feel it's appropriate, and so PI should be the entire lot. And that goes for all PI. If the public institutional use, say it was a church, doesn't actually exist on those lots, that designation should go away and goes into a different categorization. So the church is there, that would be PI. So with that in mind, staff does recommend the rezone of the property to go from R1 to PI.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff or discussion? So the PI allows them to do everything that they want to do, because I mean, we don't have a site plan in front of us or anything, and we're
Right.
working on that, but,
No, we just want to use the site plan, there's a reason why this came
Right.
into play. That's a basic
What
site
triggered
plan.
it, right.
We will still be reviewing that to make sure it still meets things like buffers and landscape requirements, things of that sort. But with it being in a PI designation, it allows for that type of intensity on the site to allow for parking and setbacks in a better realm than it does to R1 low density residential, which is typically single-family, two-family homes, which have more restrictive setbacks, things of that sort.
okay, thank you. Got a motion by Commissioner Daniels.
Second.
Approve as staff recommended?
As staff recommended, correct, with the,
Single zoning. Yeah.
correct, yes. P1.
Is that a second?
Yes, second.
All right. So we have a motion by Commissioner Daniels and a second by Vice Chair Miller. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and that will go forward then to City Council for October 15th. All right, moving on to item number 5, which is a public hearing. This public hearing has been properly posted and public notification has been printed in the Press Gazette. The Plan Commission is interested in hearing public comments on the subject agenda items. We invite your comments and ask that after your name has been called, you state your address, whether you represent a group or association, and whether you favor, oppose, or only providing information on this matter. We also ask that you confine your testimony to facts related to the proposal at hand and avoid repetitive testimony. City staff will provide a presentation during the public hearing, and questions raised by the public may be asked, but they will not be answered by staff until the upcoming actionable item. You must be recognized by the Plan Commission in order to speak, and please address your comments to the chair. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we will now open the public hearing on item number 5. Public hearing on a request for a conditional use permit for a carriage house at 1824 10th Avenue, submitted by Andrew Mevis, property owner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This property, 1824 10th, is very close to the Ashland and Lombardy intersections. This area is primarily single-family outside of Lombardy Avenue and Ashland, which obviously have commercial uses along it. Looking at the future land use map, this parcel is split in half with low-density residential recommendations and high-intensity retail office and housing. This, obviously, we talk a lot about how comp plan lines are never all that great, they just kind of like go where they feel. But that's because this area is supposed to be a little bit of an area of transition. If you were to zoom this out, you'd see a lot of that low-density residential to the north, but then obviously looking to where the market is naturally going, and then also where it should be going along Lombardy Avenue to be a little bit more high density. So this pocket closer to Ashland is stuck from our last comprehensive plan update. So this is something to keep in mind when we're talking about the density of the site, that it's not just that low-density residential in nature, even though the zoning calls for that. It does have that underlying recommendation for high-intensity retail office housing. Current zoning is R1. The existing parcel is a single-family house, no garage on site. So they are proposing the addition of a garage. That garage will have a living unit above it, which makes it a carriage house. Carriage houses require a conditional use permit within the R1 district. We don't see a lot of these applications. We are hoping to see more as we explore accessory dwelling units. So it's a use that we're definitely eager to have more of. But there are different regulations in our land use development standards to make sure that these carriage houses fit in with the character of the neighborhood that they're going into. So just a little background on that. The proposal includes the carriage house, which is shown on the top right, and then also the house is being redone as part of this. Normally, we wouldn't talk about the house at all because it's able to be redone as they proposed, just under our code. However, the height of the structure is important here because the height of the primary structure does need to exceed the height of the accessory structure. Once the remodel is done on the house, it will be 1 foot taller than the garage, the carriage house. So this is showing just some specs that they provided of the design of the house to show that they are complementary in nature. So the house, again, will be in that same footprint that it is now, driveway on the side, leading back to the carriage house. The carriage house would be the 2 stories, 2-stall garage. We did have the dimensional information in your packet, but it is going to be 26 by 30 and then reaching 22 feet in height. So just some dimensional information there. When we talk about the carriage house itself, there are the land use development standards that go along with that conditional use, the 7 standards that we use for those. So in there, I wanted to just bring your attention to some of them. So there are 9 standards for our carriage houses that were in your packet. Of those, we have some comments on 4 of them. So item number 5 is that it must be a minimum lot area shall be 2,500 square feet greater than the minimum lot area required for the main principal building in the zoning district. This cannot be met given to the size of the parcel. The house itself does not meet the minimum requirement. The lot is 6,000 square feet at our minimum and R1 is 7,500. So unattainable. They would have to get a variance through the Board of Appeals, and we have that listed as one of the conditions of approval. Item number 6 is the detached garage with the carriage house dwelling shall meet all requirements for accessory buildings if walls of the carriage house dwelling facing interior lot lines contain windows or other openings. The wall shall meet the setback at least 4 feet from the lot line. That's not currently being met on their site plan, but could be accommodated without a variance. So we would expect that out of the site plan. Item number 7, there shall be an unobstructed walkway leading from the public street to the carriage house dwelling. They showed a little bit on their site plan, but not all the way, but definitely doable with the setup that they have. And then item number 8, at least 1 dwelling unit on the zoning lot shall be owner occupied. So we have this listed as a condition of the CUP approval, noting that only 1 unit can be a short-term rental also. We have that within our municipal code, that's part of the regulation, but we wanted to reiterate that as part of the conditions for the CUP. When it comes to our regular standards that we look at for CUPs, this meets it. It's fitting within the neighborhood. The only real catch is that they can't meet that parcel size, that extra that we would want for the carriage house, but they would be able to meet the rest of the bulk requirements. So, this is just the layout of it, but I want to go back to the site plan here. They're showing that they would meet about 50% impervious surface, which is really probably the biggest issue that we would have with something being on too small of a lot. But if they're able to meet that, then there's no reason that you would need that extra 2,500 square feet. Like, I feel like it would be eligible for that variance. So usually the Board of Appeals wants to make sure that the use is allowed before they're seeing a variance for it, but we do want to condition it on that variance approval. But they do take guidance from Plan Commission when it is something that influences them. So if you have thoughts, suggestions, or you're like, no, that's way out of line, we don't agree with that, that is something that you can either outright deny with the CUP or just recommend to the board, but that would be part of our conditions of approval. And this is just showing kind of like the height comparison for that carriage house. So overall, pretty good project. We do have the conditions that I had already talked about, that the height of the primary structure has to exceed the accessory structure at the time of occupancy of the carriage house. One unit has to be owner occupied, only one's allowed to be a short-term rental, and then compliance with the rest of our codes. So we kind of covered a lot with our conditions, making sure that those additional land use development standards are being met, which they would have to go through site plan and meet all those anyway, but it's really just reiterating that those things are important to the conditional use permit piece of it.
Yeah, I can mention, I think you briefly mentioned it too. If this was an empty lot, and you came to build a house on it, even though it doesn't meet, like a by right house, even though it doesn't meet the lot area, he would be allowed to build a house because it's a pre-existing lot. So again, because this is a conditional use, not permitted by right, that's kind of that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a catch, but it's an existing neighborhood, the lot's already there, so there's nothing you can do about the size of the lot.
Right. Okay.
And that's all for now.
All right, thank you very much. All right, with this public hearing, we're looking to hear from anyone who would like to speak on this item.
All right, Andrew Mevis, the owner at 1824. I just wanted to talk about the four things that you guys just highlighted. And the number one being that the minimum lot area shall be 2,500 square feet greater than the minimum lot area required for the main building. And I just wanted to point out and show that on the plan in the PowerPoint that the sketch, it does show that I am fitting under the number one, the impervious number of being 50%, and I will meet that. And then also the other two, the windows, those are easy to take away, and that 4 feet walkway has there's ample amount of space in order to create that adjacent to the driveway. And so that's all I have to say, and I just want to present that I will meet the standards of the code, and that this lot can sustain all of that. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Let the record reflect that no one came forward, and this public hearing is now closed. Moving on to the corresponding actionable item. Item number 6, consideration with possible action on a request for a conditional use permit for a carriage house at 1824 10th Avenue, submitted by Andrew Mevis, property owner.
Thank you. We are recommending approval, subject to these 5 conditions. So we have number 5, which is our regular, has to comply with the rest of the Green Bay Municipal Code. 1, talking about the variance. 2, talking about the height of the house needing to be there at the time of occupancy of the carriage house. 3, owner occupied parcel, which is part of our code. 4, only 1 short-term rental per the lot. And that's it.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I do have some questions.
Go ahead.
So, looking at the picture, the driveway picture,
Yeah,
the color
picture.
picture. So,
yeah.
yeah, that one thing. So, the driveway to the carriage house in the back would be where the truck is. So, is that the only that's the only entry point in and
I think
out?
it curves a little bit though.
Yes.
I feel like I
So,
saw,
I'll move
look
this
at the
out of
site
the way.
plan. It goes
So
straight
using
past.
the existing drive, we'll go straight back, and then there's the required setbacks.
Okay.
And this is what we were talking about with the other setback, 4 foot, if they have the windows. So he can either take out the windows and leave it where it is, or move it over a foot or 2.
So, for the primary and the carriage house, the driveway, that one driveway would be the main entrance? And that's allowed? That's,
Yes.
okay. The second, okay. So I'm just, because this is real tight, so I'm just asking. Do we have any other carriage homes in that neighborhood? And how would that?
I don't
And I could
think
find
so.
some, I know where some are.
Yeah,
There
there
are
are a couple in
There are.
Astor that
Okay.
Yeah,
function
for
There's
sure,
a
I've
few
seen them
in
in
Astor,
Astor. There's
yeah.
like a huge barn too behind the dentist on.
But nothing else in that particular neighborhood there?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I
I
feel
mean,
like
if they
this
were-
neighborhood, it's all the little houses
The
all
bitty
in a row.
houses.
Right, yeah, just,
Yeah, I mean, the height of this structure and the height of the primary house, they're totally allowed within code.
They are, okay.
So they aren't totally out of whack, especially if you can see with this house design. You know, they're still kind
Farmhouse
of,
chic.
it's 2 stories, but, you know, not.
Yeah, the
not
only
really.
reason I ask is I know this is Green Bay, not Ashwaubenon, but I see a lot of those old homes in Ashwaubenon been gone and these little mega mansions going up, and it kind of changes the dynamic of the area, so that's the only reason I ask. And like Dave said, the 6K versus 7,500 is not really an issue because it was an empty lot, they would be able to build this.
Still have to get the variance, but I don't see that being a challenge given the size of the lot. But it is up to the Board of Appeals to grant that.
They'll have to find reason for hardship. There'll be a need to apply for that variance. They will take into consideration the actual conditions that are placed on the lot itself. So if the conditional use were approved with those conditions attached, now we have an approved use on the site, but, and can it meet the standards as far as physical dimensions? The one issue is the challenge is that 6,000 square feet. But so this would go to the Board of Appeals after any sort of approvals by the Common Council with that condition on it. But if the Common Council were to say yes, now you have a use that is permitted as long as you got the variance.
One last question. I don't know that this is applicable, but can the carriage home be larger than the primary house? It cannot. So it's not.
It's still an accessory structure.
Okay.
it looks big. They look the same size in those pictures, I
Yeah.
think.
Right.
Yeah, these are kind of deceiving.
They are, I think.
And the house ones, he sent a few over because there are a couple of options for the
Okay.
design that he's
Oh, I
looking
see, I
at.
see, okay.
But that's really out of
I
our
see.
scope, outside of the height. The height is really what's important there, which is why we conditioned it.
I believe the number is 30%. The structure of the carriage house, that footprint, can be 30% of the overall footprint, first and second floor, or if there was a finished basement, of the overall
space.
house. Yeah, so we're talking a second story or a half story on the primary home plus a larger house footprint compared to the garage footprint. It would be the code.
And so with this CUP, the CUP stays with the individuals, correct? It stays with the property. Okay. Okay. I'm just curious how you know if there's owner occupied. I don't think that, I'm not trying to say it, but I'm just, for future things, like how do you know if something's going to be owner occupied or not?
Sure, well, usually you can check by tax bills going to what address they're
Oh,
at. But at the end of the day, the zoning administrator will find out.
And if it's being rented for a short-term rental, we have lots of ways of finding that out.
So
Right.
you guys have all kinds of, right, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Right,
Okay.
and the problem is breaking those conditions, you could lose your conditional use permit, the city could order the accessory building gone.
Oh,
So it's very safe. I mean, as a
wow.
property owner, you should probably follow it.
I thought they would just like shut you down, and be like, well, you can't rent it out anymore, no, they just make you tear it down.
Well, they could remove the conditional use permit.
Okay, all right, that was
I
just,
doubt the city would do that.
I was just curious.
But-
Okay, thank you for that.
And the only other thing I think I would add is accessory dwelling units, I'm sure you've heard of them, ADUs, popular all over the country, we've been working on code for that as well. This is sort of the old school ADU, so it's the Fonzie house, you know, the living unit above the garage. If anybody remembers Happy Days. I might be aging myself. Right, so, I mean, it's still here,
Yeah.
but it's, yeah, there may be ADU regulations coming.
I
was
love
gonna
it.
bite thunder on that, because I was just gonna say, it feels like there's some crossover
Yeah.
here. And I guess the other thing I wanted to say is, this feels a little difficult for the circumstance. I applaud the applicant for going through it, but I feel like this should be a little bit easier. This is the
Yeah.
type of housing that we want to encourage, not add barriers in the way. So I'd love to see the fact that there's 5 conditions on here, plus going to council, plus the time it takes, it feels a
Right.
little difficult for the situation. I'd love to see this updated in the future.
Especially with an owner-occupied property, because that's, you got the owner on site. That's
Yeah.
generally a different situation.
I guess the only watch out for me was the spacing. Like, so just looking at, again, looking at the picture on here, I'm like, there's not enough space, because we don't have it, but then you look at the other pictures. But one thing you don't want to have is a carriage home in the back, and those residents complaining about access and complaining about everything else because of the space.
They're often, why it's a CUP is they're often site-specific. So there's a lot of exterior factors that one lot may have no problem putting a house in the back, if another might cause and have an impact on the neighborhood.
Right.
So yeah, it's a CUP, so it's only one council, one planning
It's
board
one
a
at a
month,
time.
but it's,
And I would
Yeah.
say,
Take
like,
it.
he's able to meet almost all of the bulk requirements, you know, and impervious surface is really what, when you're thinking of a single-family neighborhood, you're thinking of how much lawn space and open space they have, you know, that's a kind of like a continuity issue. And since he's able to attain that, I think that really speaks volumes to like how it can fit on the site. What are you laughing about? Why is that funny?
It's not, no, I'm sorry, it's not you. I'm thinking about how I put second stories on both of my garages right now. That's all I'm thinking.
It's like, what's funny about open space?
No, I'm sorry, I was not laughing at that. No, that's amazing, because I was, no, that,
Yes.
no, right, no, okay.
Move to approve. Second. There's no discussion.
All right, so we've got a motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Ravinsky. Any more discussion?
With all conditions of that was not.
Right, yeah, approval as recommended by staff.
Yes.
All right, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then their next step is October 15th at City Council?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Moving on then to item number 7. Consideration with possible action on a request to create a 3-lot certified survey map that includes public street dedication at 2035 Crestwood Springs Drive, 2041 Crestwood Springs Drive, 2045 Crestwood Springs Drive, 0 Bayberry Court, and 0 Packerland Drive, submitted by Brad Reimer of Verviker on behalf of Thomas and Mary Safner, property owners.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is going to be like deja vu, triple view, whatever you want to call it. The last in the trilogy, I think, of actions on this one. With this one, the future land use map shows the area, all of it, as low-density residential. For the zoning, it's currently rural residential, the property that's in question or involved in this application, but that is going through the rezoning process, and then that is going to be rezoned to low-density residential. They did have first reading at the last city council meeting, so next week they'll have the final action on that. And then this is what the certified survey map looks like. So as you remember, they had to go through an official map amendment process. So this is the 3-lot CSM that's proposed, and then if you go to the next slide, this is kind of how that official map originally looked, and that area in green is what ended up getting vacated or removed from the official map. So that's the area that they want to put their home in. And now with this, we've got the certified survey map. If you go back to the slide, you can see how it all kind of is working out now. There were 3 lots, 3 and 2 are actually a combination of 3 smaller lots into 2 larger lots, and then extending backwards, and then the cul-de-sac on Lafayette. That's really what's triggering your review here tonight. Is that cul-de-sac. So now anytime there's a road dedication or any type of public dedication, we have to bring it to Plan Commission and to City Council now. As part of the CSM process, we do send it out to a land division review team. And there were no comments regarding the road or really any comments on the plat or the CSM, and those comments that were made have been addressed, and this is the final version of the certified survey map, unless there's any other changes that come up throughout this process. But we are recommending approval.
Thank you.
And I think we already did this, but Public Works is fine with way.
Yep, they did get a chance to review it and we received no comments. And then as part of this process, there actually is gonna be a public hearing on it at city council. We're kind of treating these as official map amendments, so. There will be a public hearing, not here, surprisingly, but at city council.
Any questions for staff?
Yeah.
I'd entertain a
We
motion.
keep forgetting that we're not.
I'd entertain a motion over here.
Is that a motion,
Aye.
Vice Chair?
I would give one, I was just giving somebody else an
I'll
opportunity.
second it.
Okay.
Motion.
So we've got a motion by Vice Chair Miller and a second by Commissioner Daniels. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then we'll move forward then to City Council. Moving on to informational. Director's report.
That's me.
Oh.
She's with us.
Oh,
I'm
she's
sure
with
she will
us.
chime in too, she chooses, but I've been tasked with
welcome, Brad.
giving the
Yeah.
reports
Excellent,
now.
all right.
So the development tracker spreadsheet is in front of you in paper format. Sorry, I didn't make the deadline to get it into the packet, but better late than never. Not too many changes to this compared to the last time we had this in front of you. I'll say number one, 200 North Monroe. I think the last report I'd shared that we put this site out for RFP. This is the former Associated Bank parking lot. There was a grocery store recommended at one point in time with housing. Unfortunately, that didn't move forward, so we put that back out for RFP. RDA will be meeting tomorrow and will be considering a proposal from 360 Real Estate Solutions. They are looking at a 6-month planning option. The proposal includes 175 residential units plus an additional 27 townhomes. This is a 6-story.
Did you see the renders? They're very nice.
They're not
Very,
in the
very
packet?
nice.
Are they in the packet?
Check RDA's packet.
RDA
Oh,
packets.
that's too many packets.
Too many packets.
Too many, sorry.
They're looking at workforce housing, so 60 to 120% area median income, so not necessarily high income, not necessarily lower, right there in that sweet middle spot that we like to see, so.
What was that, what would that number be? I don't know what that.
Depends on the household size. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head,
Okay.
but it's.
Maybe
More
curious what,
affordable
I'm
than
curious
most.
what they consider a
Median.
one-bedroom,
Yeah,
like the
yeah.
range.
Probably closer to like 8 to probably 1,000, that area.
More affordable than many new ones. But
So yes, that will be looked at tomorrow. Additionally, items, 12 and 13 are new to the list. I think it was like the last one, maybe the one before, county council approved planning options for 2 industrial projects. This is the Grandview Industrial Park off Erie, south of Mason. This past summer, the city acquired 35 acres for industrial development, and we've already got 2 planning options. That's 20 acres altogether, so 20 out of the 35 are temporarily spoken for. So they have 6-month planning options on these. One is with Smets. They have a client they're working with to do a 15-acre site. The other is Girard and Fabrication. They construct cool industrial chic furniture. They're currently out of Denmark, so they're looking at possibly building out here on a 5-acre site. So everything is preliminary there, still in the early stages of planning and design, but hopefully in the not too far distant future, we'll be bringing more formal proposals for these projects through. Answer any questions?
everything went well with all the TID districts from last time?
Everything got approved and submitted to the DOR, Department of Revenue. So that's TID, the TID for Newlands projects, the Southwest Woods on the far west side, as well as JBS, those 3. And the public market.
I just say
Four. 4 new kids. So I think that might be a record for us, 1 year.
And that, the 7-unit townhome thing with Neighborworks that went through?
Townhomes, yes. In fact, that got approved. They're going to be coming back tomorrow for RDA for some additional funding to cover some environmental costs, which we anticipated. So they'll be moving forward.
Where's that neighborhood project?
This is 7-unit by, right where the what Broadway loop to get on to go east. You understood all that, right?
I did.
But my words are really not working tonight, so I apologize for that. All right. Date of the next meeting, November 4th, 2024.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Vinsky, second by Vice Chair Miller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good night.